My name is Ivy, and I am 26 years old. I always thought I understood what family meant until the day my brother's girlfriend accused me of theft. The shocked expressions, the immediate judgment, the cold dismissal in my parents' eyes as they chose to believe her over their own daughter. They disowned me without a second thought, cutting me out of their lives completely based on nothing but lies. And now, 2 years later, after the truth has finally come to light, they want back into my life as if nothing happened. Before I continue with my story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. If you have ever felt betrayed by those who should love you unconditionally, please like and subscribe to join our community of survivors who turned pain into strength. I grew up in a middle-class suburban home in Connecticut with perfectly trimmed hedges and a white picket fence that matched all the other houses on our street. From the outside, we looked like the perfect American family. My father Thomas was a successful businessman who commanded respect wherever he went. My mother Diana was the quintessential homemaker, always hosting dinner parties and ensuring our home looked immaculate for guests. Then there was my older brother James, 3 years my senior, and the absolute center of our family universe. From my earliest memories, I understood that James was special. He was the golden child, athletic and charming, with a smile that could melt the coldest hearts. Everything seemed to come naturally to him. Sports trophies lined his shelves, academic certificates plastered his walls, and praise constantly flowed in his direction. While James received standing ovations for every achievement, my accomplishments were footnotes in family conversations. When I won first place in a statewide art competition in 10th grade, my parents merely nodded with polite smiles before quickly returning to discussing James scoring the winning touchdown at his football game. The differences in how we were treated were obvious in every aspect of our lives. James had the larger bedroom with the bay window overlooking our backyard. He received new clothes at the start of each school year, while I wore hand-me-downs or shopped clearance racks. His birthday parties were elaborate affairs with dozens of friends invited, while mine were simple family dinners, sometimes even forgotten amidst his busy sports schedule. "Ivy, your brother needs more space for his trophies," my father would say when rearranging our shared bookshelf to make my books fit into a single narrow shelf. "James needs proper nutrition for his athletic development," my mother would explain when serving him larger portions of her homemade meals. The only person who seemed to truly see me was my grandmother Martha. When she visited, she would bring small gifts specifically chosen for my interests. She attended every one of my art shows, standing proudly beside my paintings and introducing me to everyone as my talented granddaughter, the artist. "You have a gift, Ivy," she would tell me while examining my latest sketch. "Never let anyone convince you that your passion is less important than anything else." Art became my sanctuary, the place where I could express myself without judgment. I spent hours in my room sketching, painting, and eventually teaching myself digital design. While my parents drove across state lines to attend James' football games, I took the bus alone to art classes at the community center. Their absence stung, but my determination grew with each missed exhibition. When it came time for college, the disparity became even more apparent. My parents paid for James to attend a prestigious university with a full package, all expenses covered from tuition to a brand new car to drive around campus. Meanwhile, I was told I would need to work through school and take out student loans. "Your brother is pursuing a practical degree in business," my father explained. "Art is just a hobby, Ivy. You need to be realistic about your future." Determined to prove my worth, I worked 2 jobs throughout college while maintaining a near-perfect GPA in my graphic design program. I applied for every scholarship available and lived on ramen noodles in a tiny apartment shared with 3 other students. When I landed an internship at a small design studio in my junior year, I biked 5 miles each way to save on transportation costs. During those challenging college years, I built my own support system. My best friend Zoe became the sister I never had, staying up late to help me finish projects and bringing me coffee during all-nighters. My mentor Sarah, a professor who recognized my potential, pushed me to enter competitions and build my portfolio. Despite everything, I never completely gave up on my family. I still came home for holidays, brought thoughtful gifts I could barely afford, and tried to engage in conversations dominated by James' accomplishments. I would call my mother weekly, though our conversations rarely lasted more than 10 minutes, and centered mainly on updates about James. After graduation, when I landed a job at Morrison Design, one of the most prestigious firms in New York, I called my parents, expecting some acknowledgement of my achievement. "That is nice, dear," my mother said before immediately shifting the conversation. "Did I tell you James just got promoted and he has been dating this wonderful girl? We are hoping she might be the one." I swallowed my disappointment and congratulated my brother as I always did. That was our family dynamic, and while I had created a life I was proud of despite their lack of support, a part of me still yearned for their approval and acceptance. Little did I know that the pattern of being overshadowed by James was about to take a much darker turn with the arrival of his new girlfriend into our lives. The first time I met Megan was during Thanksgiving dinner almost 3 years ago. I had driven back from New York to Connecticut exhausted after finishing a major project at work, but looking forward to the traditional family gathering. When I arrived, the house was already filled with the mouth-watering aroma of turkey and pumpkin pie. "Ivy, you made it." My mother greeted me with a quick hug before immediately turning her attention back to the kitchen. "James and his girlfriend are in the living room. Go say hello." I walked into the living room to find my brother sitting on the couch with his arm around a strikingly beautiful woman. She had perfect blonde hair cascading down her shoulders, flawless makeup, and a smile that seemed rehearsed for a toothpaste commercial. "Hey, sis." James stood up to give me a brief hug. "This is Megan. Megan, this is my sister Ivy." Megan rose gracefully from the couch and extended her hand. "I have heard so much about you," she said, her voice sweet as honey. "James told me you work at some design place in New York." "Morrison Design," I corrected her with a smile. "One of the top firms in the country." "That sounds fun," she replied dismissively before turning back to James. "Babe, should we tell your sister our news?" Throughout dinner, I watched as Megan charmed my entire family. She complimented my mother repeatedly on the food, asked my father insightful questions about his business, and laughed at all of James' jokes. She seemed perfect, almost too perfect. I tried to engage her in conversation several times, asking about her job in pharmaceutical sales and her hometown in California. Her answers were polite but brief before she expertly steered the conversation back to herself and James as a couple. It was only when we were briefly alone in the kitchen that I caught a glimpse of something different. I was helping clear the dishes when Megan came in with an empty wine glass. "Your brother tells me you grew up in this house," she said, running her finger along the granite countertop. "Must be nice having parents with such good taste. And money." The comment caught me off guard. "They worked hard for what they have," I replied cautiously. She gave me a smile that did not reach her eyes. "And now James is following in your father's footsteps. So impressive." She looked me up and down. "Must be tough being the artsy sister when business is clearly the family value." Before I could respond, she plastered on her perfect smile again as my mother entered the kitchen. "Diana, let me help you with dessert. You absolutely must give me your pumpkin pie recipe." Throughout the rest of the weekend, I noticed other moments when Megan's mask seemed to slip. The way she examined the family photos with particular attention to the ones showing our vacation home in Maine, how she casually mentioned the brands of her clothes and accessories in conversation, the slightly dismissive tone she used when speaking to me when others were not paying attention. By the time I returned to New York on Sunday, I felt uneasy, but told myself I was overreacting. James seemed happy, and that was what mattered. Over the next few months, Megan quickly became integrated into our family. My mother started referring to her as the daughter I never had, a comment that stung more than she realized. Family calls now included updates on Megan's accomplishments and activities, as if she were already an official member of the family. "Megan helped me redecorate the guest room," my mother gushed during one of our phone calls. "She has such impeccable taste, much better than those abstract paintings you sent us last Christmas." What started as subtle competition soon became more overt. When I mentioned getting a small promotion at work, Megan would counter with a story about her record-breaking sales quarter. If I brought homemade cookies to a family gathering, she would arrive with an elaborate, professionally made dessert. The Christmas dinner that year marked a turning point. I had saved for months to buy a designer dress for the occasion, wanting to make a good impression and perhaps gain some recognition from my family. When I arrived, Megan complimented me immediately. "That color looks great on you, Ivy. So bold to wear something so bright." Minutes later, as we gathered around the table, Megan gasped as she accidentally spilled her full glass of red wine across my lap, ruining the dress completely. "Oh my goodness, I am so clumsy," she exclaimed, making a show of dabbing at the spreading stain with a napkin, managing only to make it worse. James rushed to comfort her rather than help me. "It is okay, babe. It was just an accident." I caught a glimpse of what appeared to be satisfaction in her eyes before she buried her face in James' shoulder, crying about how terrible she felt. When I tried to talk to James about Megan's behavior the next day, he dismissed my concerns immediately. "You have always been jealous of anyone I date," he accused. "Megan is amazing, and you are just looking for problems because you do not have someone special in your life." His words hurt especially because they were untrue. I had always supported his relationships. This was different, but I could see he was completely under her spell. I confided in Zoe during our weekly coffee meetup back in New York. "I do not know what to do," I admitted. "There is something off about her, but no one else seems to see it." "Trust your instincts," Zoe advised. "But also be careful. If she is as manipulative as you think, confronting her directly might backfire." A few weeks later, Megan reached out to me directly, suggesting we meet for coffee the next time I was in Connecticut to bond as future sisters. Against my better judgment, I agreed, hoping that perhaps I had misjudged her. We met at a small cafe near my parents' house. For the first 30 minutes, the conversation was pleasant enough as we discussed neutral topics like favorite TV shows and travel destinations. Then, as she stirred her latte, Megan's tone changed. "You know, Ivy, James and I are getting serious. Very serious." "I am happy for you both," I replied carefully. She leaned forward slightly. "I just want to make sure we understand each other. James and I have big plans for our future, and I would hate for anything or anyone to get in our way." "I am not sure what you mean," I said, though the implied threat was clear. Megan smiled sweetly. "Just that family harmony is so important to me, and to your parents. They have been so welcoming, treating me like their own daughter." She emphasized the last part while maintaining direct eye contact. It would be a shame if anything disrupted that. The conversation left me deeply unsettled. It seemed Megan viewed me as some kind of threat, though I could not understand why. I had never interfered in James' relationships, and despite the unequal treatment from my parents, I had never tried to sabotage his happiness. What I did not realize then was that Megan was setting the stage for something far worse than subtle jabs and ruined dresses. She was calculating and patient, waiting for the perfect opportunity to remove me from the picture entirely. The day that changed everything was James' 30th birthday. My parents had planned an elaborate celebration at their house, inviting extended family and close friends. I had taken a Friday off work to drive to Connecticut for the weekend festivities. For months, I had been working on a special gift for James. Despite our complicated relationship, he was still my brother, and I wanted to create something meaningful for this milestone birthday. I had designed and painted a custom piece of artwork featuring significant places from our childhood, his college campus, and his favorite vacation spots, all interconnected in an intricate design that told the story of his life so far. I had spent countless evenings and weekends perfecting it, even having it professionally framed. It had cost me nearly a month's rent between materials framing and taking time off from freelance projects, but I was proud of the result and excited to give it to him. When I arrived at my parents' house Friday evening, the atmosphere was already festive. Balloons adorned the entryway, and my mother was supervising caterers in the kitchen. My father was setting up the bar in the backyard, and James and Megan were nowhere to be seen. "They went to pick up the cake," my mother explained, barely looking up from her task list. "Put your things in the guest room. Not the main one, though, that is for your aunt and uncle. Take the small one in the basement." I swallowed my hurt at being relegated to the basement while extended family got the proper guest rooms and went to settle in. As I unpacked, my grandmother, Martha, knocked on the doorframe. "There is my favorite granddaughter," she said, enveloping me in a warm hug that smelled of familiar perfume and freshly baked cookies. "Let me look at you. Still working too hard, I see." "It is good to see you, Grandma," I said, genuinely happy to see her. "How have you been?" "Oh, still kicking," she chuckled. "I brought something for you." She handed me a small package. "Open it later when you are alone." The party officially began Saturday evening. The house was filled with people congratulating James, who soaked up the attention with his usual charm. Megan stayed glued to his side in a stunning blue dress, playing the role of devoted girlfriend perfectly. When the time came for gifts, my parents presented James with keys to a new sports car parked in the driveway, leading to gasps and applause from the guests. Various relatives gave him expensive watches, designer clothes, and gift cards. Finally, I brought out my carefully wrapped gift. James seemed genuinely surprised by the size and weight of it. As he unwrapped it and saw the artwork, his expression changed to one of genuine appreciation. "Ivy, this is incredible," he said, studying the details. "You made this?" For a moment, we connected as siblings again as he recognized places meaningful to both of us. Guests gathered around, admiring the artwork and complimenting my talent. My parents even looked impressed, if somewhat surprised. I noticed Megan standing slightly apart, her smile fixed but her eyes cold as she watched the positive reaction to my gift. The moment was short-lived, however, as my mother quickly moved the party along to cake and champagne. Later that evening, as the party wound down, my father called for everyone's attention. "We have one more special moment tonight," he announced with a broad smile. "James has something important he would like to share." James stepped forward, looking nervous but excited. "Thanks, Dad. As many of you know, Megan and I have been together for a while now." He turned to face her. "And she has made me the happiest man alive." My stomach dropped as I realized what was happening. James was going to propose right there, turning his birthday party into an engagement celebration as well. "I had a whole plan for tomorrow," he continued. "But since everyone we love is here now." He reached into his pocket, but suddenly froze, his expression changing to confusion. He patted his other pockets, looking increasingly panicked. "The ring," he whispered to my father. "It is gone." The ring in question was my grandmother's, a family heirloom with a large diamond surrounded by sapphires. My grandmother had given it to my mother, who had eagerly offered it to James for his proposal. "You had it in the small blue box," my father said. "In your jacket pocket." "I know, but it is not there now," James replied, his voice rising with stress. What followed was a frantic search throughout the house. Guests awkwardly helped look under furniture and between couch cushions. My mother appeared on the verge of tears as she retraced James' steps throughout the day. I joined the search, checking the kitchen and bathrooms, feeling terrible for my brother despite our complicated relationship. After nearly 30 minutes of searching, Megan called out from near the gift table. "Everyone," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I found something." All eyes turned to her as she held up a small blue velvet box, the very box that should have contained the ring. "Where was it?" my father asked, relief evident in his voice. Megan's eyes shifted to me, and I felt a chill run down my spine. "It was in Ivy's purse," she said softly, as if reluctant to make the accusation. "I noticed her bag was open on the chair, and I saw the box inside." The room went completely silent. All eyes turned to me in shock and growing anger. "What? No, I did not take it," I protested, feeling blood drain from my face. "That is impossible." James strode over and snatched my purse from the chair where I had left it. Before I could object, he dumped the contents onto the table. Credit cards, keys, lipstick, and other personal items scattered across the surface. And there, unmistakably among my belongings, was the diamond ring now fallen out of its box. The gasps were audible. My mother let out a small cry of distress. "Ivy, how could you?" James demanded, his face contorted with fury and betrayal. "On my birthday, were you planning to sell it?" "No, I would never. Someone must have planted it there," I said desperately, looking around the room. My eyes landed on Megan, who was now being comforted by my mother, a perfect picture of distress. "Why would anyone do that?" my father asked coldly. Who else would have a reason to steal a family heirloom? I did not steal anything. I cried, tears now streaming down my face. I was helping look for it. Why would I do that if I had taken it? To avoid suspicion, James said bitterly. I cannot believe my own sister would try to ruin the most important moment of my life. James, please, I begged. You know me. I would never do this. But looking into his eyes, I realized with horror that he did not know me. None of them did. They had created a version of me in their minds, the jealous, less successful sister who would be envious enough of her golden brother to sabotage his proposal. I think you should leave, my father said, his voice ice cold and final. Dad, please, I whispered, looking desperately around the room for anyone who might believe me. The faces of relatives and friends showed only shock and judgment. Even my grandmother looked confused and hurt. My mother would not even look at me. She kept her arms around Megan, who was now softly crying into her shoulder. The perfect victim. I want you out of my house, my father repeated louder this time. Now! Humiliated and devastated, I gathered my scattered belongings with shaking hands. No one moved to help me. No one spoke in my defense. As I walked toward the door, James called after me. Do not bother coming back, Ivy. You are no longer welcome in this family. The drive back to my apartment in New York was a blur of tears and disbelief. I called Zoe repeatedly until she finally answered, her voice groggy with sleep. They think I stole it, Zoe, I sobbed into the phone. My entire family thinks I am a thief. They threw me out. What? Slow down, she said, instantly alert. I am coming over. Just get home safely. By the time I reached my apartment, Zoe was waiting outside. She took one look at my tear-streaked face and pulled me into a tight hug. Whatever happened, we will figure it out, she promised. I am here. What I did not know then was that this was only the beginning of my nightmare. The family that had always kept me on the periphery had now excised me completely based on nothing but a cruel lie. The days following James' birthday party were the darkest of my life. I returned to my apartment in New York in a state of shock, unable to fully process what had happened. The accusations, the looks of disgust and disappointment, the finality in my father's voice when he told me to leave, all played on repeat in my mind. The morning after the text messages began. From James, do not contact me or anyone in our family again. You have done enough damage. From my mother, I cannot understand why you would do this. We raised you better than this. I cannot even look at the family photos right now. From my aunt, your parents are devastated. How could you be so selfish? I tried calling my parents repeatedly, desperate to explain, to defend myself, to understand how they could so quickly believe the worst of me. Each call went straight to voicemail. After the fifth attempt, I received an email from my father that crushed whatever hope I had left. Ivy, after much consideration, we have decided that your actions have violated the fundamental trust that holds a family together. The ring you attempted to steal has been in our family for generations and was meant to symbolize love and commitment. Your attempt to sabotage your brother's happiness for your own gain is unforgivable. As of today, we are formally cutting ties with you. Do not attempt to contact us or come to the house. Any belongings you have left here will be sent to your apartment. Thomas Williams. My own father had written to me as if I were a business associate being terminated. No benefit of the doubt, no chance to explain, no consideration of our shared history or blood ties. Just a cold dismissal based on a false accusation. Zoe stayed with me that first weekend, canceling her own plans to ensure I was not alone. She made me tea, ordered food when I had no appetite, and listened as I cycled between sobbing anger and disbelief. There has to be an explanation, I said, pacing my small living room. The ring must have been planted in my purse. It had to be Megan. She is the only one who would have a reason. I believe you, Zoe assured me, but without proof, it is going to be hard to convince your family. My mentor, Sarah, called on Monday when I did not show up for work. I broke down on the phone, barely able to explain what had happened. Take the week off, she said firmly. I will speak to the team. Focus on taking care of yourself right now. But taking care of myself proved nearly impossible as the situation spiraled. The emotional devastation began to manifest physically. I could not sleep, barely ate, and found it difficult to concentrate on even the simplest tasks. When I did return to work the following week, my performance suffered noticeably. Designs that normally took me a day stretched into a week. Feedback from clients that I would typically handle with professional grace now reduced me to tears in the bathroom. "Ivy, we are concerned," my supervisor said during our monthly review. "This is not the quality we expect from someone at your level." "I am going through some personal issues," I explained vaguely. "It will not affect my work going forward." But it did. The trauma of being falsely accused and disowned had shattered my confidence and sense of self. If my own family could believe me capable of such a terrible act, how could I trust my judgment about anything? The isolation grew as word spread through our extended family and hometown community. Cousins unfriended me on social media. Former high school classmates sent messages asking if the rumors were true. Had I really tried to steal my grandmother's ring out of jealousy? 6 weeks after the incident, I ran into my mother at the grocery store when I was visiting Zoe, who lived in a neighboring town to my parents. I froze in the produce section, a bundle of kale in my hand, as our eyes met across the display of apples and oranges. For a brief moment, I saw recognition and perhaps a flicker of doubt in her eyes. Then her face hardened. "Diana," called a voice, and Megan appeared beside my mother pushing a shopping cart. Her eyes widened in fake surprise at seeing me. "Oh, should we go to another store?" she asked loudly enough for nearby shoppers to hear. My mother placed a protective arm around Megan. "No need, we were just leaving," she said, steering the cart away without another word to me. The public snub left me standing there humiliated as curious shoppers looked between us, undoubtedly wondering about the drama they had just witnessed. Back in New York, the harassment continued in new forms. James' friends, who had always been cordial to me at family gatherings, now sent messages ranging from disappointed to outright hostile. "Always knew something was off about you," wrote one. "James deserves better than a thief for a sister." "Jealousy is such an ugly trait," commented another on an old photo before I blocked them all. The weight of the accusations and isolation became too heavy to bear alone. At Zoe's insistence, I finally made an appointment with a therapist, Dr. Lena Fisher. "What you are experiencing is a form of complex trauma," Dr. Fisher explained during our sessions. "Being rejected by your family, especially on false grounds, strikes at the core of your identity and sense of belonging." Through therapy, I began to examine not just the recent betrayal, but the lifelong pattern of being secondary in my family's eyes. The constant comparison to James, the dismissal of my achievements, the subtle and not so subtle messages that I was somehow less valuable, less worthy of love and attention. "Your family's quick willingness to believe you capable of theft suggests they already had a narrative about you in their minds," Dr. Fisher observed. "One that made this accusation seem plausible to them, despite your history of honesty." The insight was both painful and liberating. I had spent my life trying to earn the unconditional love that should have been my birthright. Perhaps this final betrayal was forcing me to see what had always been true. My worth had never been fully recognized by the people who should have valued me most. 2 months after the incident, I made the difficult decision to move to a new apartment. Every corner of my current place held memories of tearful phone calls, sleepless nights, and the slow unraveling of my former life. I found a smaller studio in a different neighborhood, trading space for a fresh start. Packing was an emotional process, each item a reminder of the person I had been before the accusation. Photographs of family holidays went into a box I stored in the back of my closet, unable to display them, but equally unable to throw them away. The new apartment became a blank canvas. I painted the walls a soft blue-green, filled the space with plants, and displayed only artwork that brought me joy. My grandmother's last birthday gift to me, a small watercolor of the beach, where we used to collect shells, took the central spot on my wall. As the months passed, I poured myself into my work as a form of therapy. The designs I created during this period had a depth and emotional resonance that ironically advanced my professional reputation. I channeled my pain into creativity, creating digital landscapes that expressed the loneliness and resilience I was experiencing. These are some of your best work yet, Sarah commented during a portfolio review. There is something raw and authentic here that clients are responding to. Slowly, painfully, I began rebuilding my sense of self apart from my family's definition. I joined a community art class where I made new friends who knew nothing of my past. I volunteered at a youth center teaching design skills to teenagers finding purpose in mentoring others who felt like outsiders. And all the while I guarded the broken pieces of my heart, wondering if they would ever truly heal from such a profound betrayal. 6 months after the incident that shattered my family, I had established a new routine. Weekdays were for work, where I was gradually rebuilding my professional reputation. Tuesday evenings were for therapy with Dr. Fisher. Weekends included art classes and occasional dinners with Zoe and the small circle of friends who had stood by me. It was not the life I had envisioned, but it was becoming sustainable. The acute pain had dulled to a persistent ache that I had learned to function around. I no longer broke down crying in public places. I could go hours, sometimes even days, without replaying the accusations and rejection in my mind. Then, on an ordinary Wednesday evening, as I was preparing a simple dinner, my phone rang with a number I did not immediately recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, assuming it was a telemarketer, but something made me answer. Hello? Ivy. It is Grandma Martha. My hand trembled slightly. My grandmother was the only family member I truly missed, the only one whose rejection had hurt as deeply as my parents. I had tried calling her several times in the weeks after the incident, but she never picked up. Grandma, I said, my voice catching. How are you? Oh, my dear girl, she said, her voice warm but tired. I owe you an apology, a big one. I sank onto my couch, heart pounding. What do you mean? I should have known better, she said firmly. I never should have believed you would steal anything, especially something so meaningful. You have always been the most honest soul. Tears sprung to my eyes. Thank you for saying that. It means more than you know. Listen carefully, Ivy. She continued, her voice taking on an urgent quality. Something has happened, and I think it is time the truth came out. She explained that 2 weeks prior, James and Megan had a massive argument at my parents' house. They had been having problems for months, apparently, with James increasingly suspicious of Megan's behavior. He caught her in several lies, my grandmother said. Small things at first, claiming to be working late when she was shopping, saying she paid bills that were still outstanding, but then he found messages on her phone with another man. The confrontation had been explosive, with my parents trying to mediate. Megan had stormed out, threatening to reveal family secrets if James did not fix things with her. This had raised red flags for everyone, but especially for my grandmother. After she left, I told your parents and James something I should have mentioned months ago, she continued. Small things had been disappearing from my room whenever I stayed at the house. My silver bracelet, a pearl earring, even some cash from my wallet. Nothing major enough to cause a stir, but enough that I had noticed. Because of these incidents, my grandmother had taken an unusual precaution during her last visit. I installed a small security camera in my guest room, she said, a hint of mischief in her voice. At my age, people assume I am not tech-savvy, but that Amazon fellow makes it quite easy these days. My heart began racing as I realized where this was leading. I checked the footage from James' birthday weekend, she confirmed. And there it was, clear as day. Megan entering my room Friday night when everyone was downstairs. She found the ring box in James' jacket that was hanging in my closet. She took out the ring, put it back in the box, and slipped it into her dress pocket. I gasped. You have it on video? Yes, Martha said firmly. And there is more. The next evening during the party, when everyone was distracted by the gifts, the camera caught her again. She took your purse from where you had left it on my bed, placed the ring and box inside, and then put it back. 20 minutes later, she miraculously found it in your bag. I felt dizzy with the confirmation of what I had suspected all along. Have you shown this to everyone? I went straight to your parents' house yesterday with my tablet. Made them all sit down and watch it. Twice. There was grim satisfaction in her voice. You should have seen their faces, Ivy. James looked like he might be sick. Your father could not speak for a full 5 minutes, your mother cried. Relief and vindication washed over me in dizzying waves. What did they say? James immediately tried calling Megan, who hung up once she realized why he was calling. He drove to her apartment, but she had already packed essential items and left. Your father called their lawyer about possibly pressing charges for theft, though the ring was recovered. I took a deep breath, trying to process everything. And what about me? Did they say anything about me? There was a pause on the line. They are devastated, Ivy. Ashamed. They know they failed you terribly. They have been trying to call you since yesterday, but they think you have blocked their numbers. I had in fact blocked them months ago after the constant rejection became too painful. They want to make amends, my grandmother continued. They asked me to call first, thinking you might actually answer my call. I sat in silence, emotions churning. The vindication I had longed for had finally arrived, but it did not bring the pure relief I had imagined. Instead, I felt a complicated mix of satisfaction, lingering hurt, and uncertainty about how to proceed. Ivy, are you still there? My grandmother asked gently. Yes, I managed. I just do not know what to say, or what to do next. You do not have to decide anything right now, she assured me. Just know that the truth is out. Your name has been cleared, and your family is realizing just how terribly they treated you. After we hung up, I sat motionless on my couch for nearly an hour, staring at the wall as tears silently streamed down my face. They were not tears of sadness exactly, nor purely of relief. They were the tears of someone who had been carrying a heavy burden that was suddenly lifted, leaving me weightless and disoriented. My phone began buzzing with notifications. Text messages from my parents, voicemails from James, emails with subject lines containing words like, sorry, and forgive us, and please call. I turned off my phone and called Zoe. They know, I said when she answered. Grandma had a security camera. She caught Megan planting the ring in my purse. Everyone knows I was innocent. Oh my God, Ivy, Zoe breathed. That is incredible. How do you feel? I have no idea, I admitted. Vindicated, angry, relieved, all of it at once. All perfectly valid, she assured me. What are you going to do? That was the question I wrestled with over the following days. My therapist advised taking time to process before making any decisions. Being right does not automatically heal the wound of betrayal, Dr. Fisher pointed out. Your family choosing to believe the worst of you revealed something fundamental about your relationship. That truth exists independently of Megan's deception. I spent the weekend journaling, meditating, and talking with Zoe and Sarah about potential next steps. By Sunday evening, I had decided on a course of action. I would meet with my family, but on my terms and only after giving myself time to prepare emotionally. I sent a brief email to my parents. I am willing to meet in 2 weeks, Saturday 1 p.m. at Carlton Restaurant in the city. Just the four of us, James, Mom, Dad, and me. I need this time to process, so please respect my space until then. The immediate flood of relieved responses confirmed what my grandmother had said. They were desperate to reconnect, to explain, to apologize. But I needed this boundary, this delay, to ensure I entered the conversation from a position of emotional strength rather than raw vulnerability. As I prepared for this meeting, I reflected on what I needed from my family going forward. Not just apologies, but recognition of the deeper patterns that had made this betrayal possible. And most importantly, I needed to decide what kind of relationship I could realistically have with them after everything that had happened. The truth had been revealed, but the more difficult question remained: was truth enough to rebuild what had been so thoroughly broken? 2 weeks after my grandmother's revelation, I arrived at Carlton Restaurant 15 minutes early for our scheduled meeting. I had chosen this upscale Manhattan restaurant carefully, a neutral territory where the public setting might help keep emotions in check. I wore a forest green dress that I had designed and sewed myself, paired with my grandmother's pearl earrings, the only family heirloom I still possessed. My hair was styled in a neat updo, and I had applied my makeup with extra care. The armor of appearance mattered today, giving me confidence I desperately needed. The hostess led me to a quiet corner table I had specifically requested. I ordered a glass of water and waited, rehearsing in my mind the boundaries I had established with Dr. Fisher. I would listen. I would speak my truth calmly. I would not accept platitudes or easy solutions. And most importantly, I would not make decisions about forgiveness under pressure. At precisely 1 p.m., I saw them enter. My parents looked older than I remembered, my father's posture less commanding, my mother's face etched with new lines of worry. Behind them came James, pale and uncertain. The golden child now looked tarnished by guilt. They spotted me, and for a moment we all froze, separated by more than just the physical distance of the restaurant floor. Then they approached my mother's eyes, already glistening with tears. "Ivy," she said, her voice breaking. I stood accepting brief, awkward hugs from each of them before we all sat down. A painful silence descended as a waiter distributed menus and took drink orders. None of us looked at the food options. "Thank you for agreeing to meet us," my father finally said, his usual authoritative tone replaced by something hesitant. "We know we do not deserve it." I took a steadying breath. I thought it was important we talk in person. "Ivy," James began, his voice thick. "I do not even know where to start. When I saw that footage..." He shook his head, unable to continue. "Perhaps you could start with an explanation," I said, keeping my voice level. "I would like to understand how all of you so quickly believed I would steal a family heirloom." My parents exchanged glances, neither seemingly eager to answer the question directly. "We were shocked," my mother offered weakly. "The ring was so important, and when Megan found it in your purse..." "That is what happened," I said. "But not why. Why was it so easy for you to think the worst of me, to throw me out without even giving me a chance to defend myself?" My father cleared his throat. "We made a terrible mistake. We jumped to conclusions." "But why those conclusions?" I pressed. "What about me, about my character or our relationship, made theft seem like something I would do?" The uncomfortable silence that followed spoke volumes. They had no good answer because the truth was too painful to acknowledge. The ease with which they had believed me capable of such an act was rooted in how they had always seen me as less than as secondary, as somehow flawed in comparison to the golden child sitting beside them. James was the first to break. "It is my fault," he said, tears now streaming down his face. "I have always gotten everything. The attention, the praise, the support. You worked twice as hard for half the recognition. And when Megan came along, I was blind Ivy. I chose her over you without hesitation, even though you have always supported me." I had not expected this level of self-awareness from my brother. For a moment I was speechless. "We failed you," my mother admitted, dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. "Not just that night, but throughout your life. We took your goodness for granted, your independence, your talent." "We were wrong," my father added. "So wrong. And we will spend the rest of our lives trying to make it up to you if you will let us." As they spoke, I felt the years of built-up hurt and resentment rising to the surface. "Do you know what it was like?" I asked, my voice finally breaking. "To be thrown out of my family based on a lie. To be cut off completely, without even the benefit of the doubt. To have to rebuild my entire life. My sense of self, because the people who should have loved me unconditionally believed I was capable of something so petty and cruel." My words hung in the air between us. My mother was openly crying now, and my father looked more diminished than I had ever seen him. "I lost my job," I continued. "I had to move. I had panic attacks in grocery stores. I doubted everything about myself. And all because none of you really knew me at all." "We want to know you now," James said quietly. "The real you, if you will give us that chance." My father reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small box, placing it on the table between us. For a moment I thought it might be the infamous ring, and my stomach clenched. But when he opened it, I saw a key. "This is to our lake house," he explained. "We have put it in your name. We know it cannot make up for what happened, but it was always your favorite place as a child. We want you to have it." I stared at the key, memories flooding back of summer days spent sketching by the water while my family boated and swam. It had been my sanctuary, the one place where I had felt peaceful within our family dynamic. "And this," my mother said, sliding an envelope across the table. It is a check. To compensate for the job you lost, the apartment, everything. We want to make things right. I did not touch the envelope. You think you can buy back a relationship with material things? They looked stricken at my response. That is not our intention, my father said quickly. We just want to make amends in any way we can. I do not need your lake house or your money, I said firmly. What I needed was your trust, your love, your belief in my basic goodness. And when it mattered most, none of you could give me that. James reached across the table, not quite touching my hand, but placing his own nearby. Tell us what you do need, Ivy. Please. We will do anything. I took a deep breath, centering myself in the way Dr. Fisher had practiced with me. I need time, I said finally. I need all of you to understand that we cannot go back to the way things were before, because even before the accusation, our family dynamic was broken. I was never valued equally. My achievements were never celebrated the same way. My voice was never heard. I looked each of them in the eye as I continued. If we are going to have any relationship moving forward, it needs to be built on new terms, equal terms, with boundaries that you respect and patterns that we consciously change. Anything, my mother whispered. We will do anything. Then listen, I said. Really listen to what I am saying. I am willing to try family therapy. I am willing to rebuild individual relationships with each of you separately at first. But I will not pretend that one conversation erases years of inequality or 6 months of abandonment. My father nodded slowly, seemingly absorbing the magnitude of what rebuilding would actually require. And I need you to know, I concluded, that forgiveness might come with time, but forgetting is not possible. What happened will always be part of our story. As we ordered food that none of us had much appetite for, the conversation shifted to more practical matters. James told me that Megan had disappeared, apparently moving back to California. My parents had informed the extended family of the truth, sending a formal email explaining that I had been falsely accused and that they deeply regretted the pain caused. Aunt Carol wants to call you, my mother mentioned tentatively, and your cousins have been asking if you might come to Thanksgiving. One step at a time, I reminded her. Individual relationships first. Large family gatherings are far down the road. By the time we finished our barely touched meals, we had agreed on a tentative path forward. My parents would find a family therapist. James and I would meet for coffee the following week, just the two of us. My mother could call once a week, but needed to respect if I did not always answer or want to talk long. As we prepared to leave, James asked the question that I could see had been on all their minds. Can you ever forgive us, Ivy? Truly forgive us? I considered his question carefully. I do not know yet, I answered honestly. Forgiveness is not a single decision. It is a process. What I can tell you is that I am willing to begin that process. We parted outside the restaurant with awkward, tentative hugs. As I watched them walk toward their car, I felt neither the vindication I had imagined nor the warm reconciliation they had hoped for. Instead, I felt something more nuanced, the quiet strength of having spoken my truth and set my boundaries regardless of outcome. I texted Zoe on my way home. It is done. They apologized. I set boundaries, taking it one day at a time. Her response came immediately. So proud of you. Whatever you decide, your chosen family has your back. Walking into my small apartment later that evening, I noticed for the first time in months that it truly felt like home, a space I had created that reflected the person I had become through adversity. The reconciliation with my family might or might not succeed, but either way, I now knew I would be okay. 1 year after my grandmother Martha revealed the truth about Megan's deception, my life had transformed in ways I never could have predicted. The journey had not been linear, with progress and setbacks intertwining like the complex patterns I now created in my artwork. The most visible change was professional. 6 months after our initial reconciliation meeting, I had left Morrison Design to establish my own small studio, Ivy Originals. Using part of the money my parents had given me despite my initial resistance to accepting it, I had rented a bright corner space in an up-and-coming neighborhood. There, surrounded by plants and natural light, I worked with a select group of clients who valued authentic storytelling through design. My latest achievement was a solo exhibition at a well-respected gallery in Chelsea, titled Broken and Rebuilt. The collection featured digital art and mixed media pieces that chronicled my emotional journey through betrayal, isolation, and eventual healing. The central piece, a large-scale work combining photography, painting, and digital elements, showed a shattered glass vessel painstakingly reconstructed with gold, filling the cracks inspired by the Japanese art of kintsugi. "Your work speaks to anyone who has ever had to rebuild themselves," commented an influential art critic at the opening night. "The pain is evident, but so is the strength." Standing in that crowded gallery watching strangers connect emotionally with my most vulnerable experiences, I felt a sense of purpose I had never known before. My suffering had been transformed into something meaningful that could help others feel less alone in their own struggles. The rebuilding of relationships with my family had been far more complicated than my professional reinvention. As promised, we had started with individual connections rather than trying to immediately restore the family unit as a whole. My relationship with grandmother Martha had deepened into something precious. We spoke weekly by phone, and I visited her monthly at her home where we would paint together or simply sit in her garden drinking tea. Her unwavering belief in me had become a cornerstone of my healing. "I always knew you were the strongest one in this family," she told me during one visit. "Now everyone else knows it too." James and I had established a cautious friendship meeting regularly for coffee or walks in Central Park. During these meetings, we slowly unraveled the complex dynamics of our childhood, him acknowledging his role as the favored child, and me expressing the hurt that had caused. The conversations were often difficult, but necessary. "I look back at how I treated you," he admitted during one particularly honest discussion, "and I barely recognized that person. I was so entitled, so blind to my own privilege within our family." He had started therapy himself, working through not only the betrayal by Megan, but his own identity issues that came from being placed on a pedestal for so long. "I never felt I could fail," he confessed. "Every achievement just raised expectations higher. In some ways, you had more freedom to find yourself authentically." This perspective shift had allowed us to see each other more clearly than we ever had before, recognizing both the pain and the unexpected gifts our different experiences had given us. My relationship with my parents remained the most challenging to rebuild. Decades of ingrained patterns could not be undone quickly, and there were times when they would slip back into old behaviors, treating James with more interest or dismissing my accomplishments. The difference now was that I could name these patterns when they appeared, and they were learning slowly to recognize and correct them. Our family therapy sessions with Dr. Nadine Cooper had been revelatory, particularly for my parents. They had been forced to examine their own upbringings, the values they had unconsciously prioritized, and the harm their unequal treatment had caused. "I was raised to believe that boys carried on the family legacy," my father admitted during one session. "I never questioned whether that was fair or right. I just replicated what I knew." "And I followed your lead," my mother added, turning to him before facing me. "I should have been your advocate, Ivy. I failed you in that." These insights did not erase the hurt, but they helped me understand that their behavior, while damaging, had not been intentionally malicious. They had been operating from their own limited perspectives and generational blind spots. The family as a whole had begun to gather for occasional dinners, usually at neutral restaurants, rather than the family home, which still held painful memories for me. These gatherings were sometimes awkward, sometimes surprisingly pleasant, but always ended with me returning to my own space, my boundaries intact. Perhaps the most unexpected development had been the creation of a support group I founded called Falsely Accused. What began as an online forum for people who had experienced similar situations had grown into regular in-person meetings at a community center near my studio. Twice monthly, I sat with others who knew the unique pain of having their character maligned by those they trusted. "Before finding this group, I thought I was alone," said Amanda, a regular participant whose husband's family had accused her of stealing money that her brother-in-law had actually taken. "Hearing your story gave me permission to stand up for my own truth." Facilitating these meetings, watching people move from devastation to empowerment, had become one of the most fulfilling aspects of my new life. As for Megan, she had apparently tried to recreate her scheme with another wealthy family in California, only to be caught in the act and exposed. James occasionally received updates through mutual friends, but had completely cut ties with her. Her name was rarely mentioned in our family conversations, though the damage she had caused remained an unspoken presence. On the anniversary of my grandmother's revelatory phone call, I sat in my apartment reflecting on the tumultuous year. The pain had not disappeared entirely. There were still moments when the memory of my family's instant disbelief in me would catch me off guard, bringing a fresh wave of hurt. But those moments were less frequent, less intense, and no longer defined me. I opened my journal and wrote, "1 year later. The family who once disowned me based on lies helped me discover my own truth, that my worth was never theirs to determine in the first place. The cracks they created became openings for new light, and while our relationship will never be what it once was, perhaps it has become something more honest, more equal, and ultimately more real." As I closed the journal, my phone chimed with a text message from Zoe. "Happy reinvention anniversary dinner tonight, to celebrate how far you have come." I smiled and replied affirmatively. My chosen family, the friends who had stood by me during the darkest times, remained my most treasured support system, even as my birth family worked to earn back their place in my life. The journey of rebuilding after betrayal was ongoing, with no neat resolution or perfect ending. But standing in my truth, creating boundaries that protected my hard-won peace, and transforming my pain into art that connected with others, I had found something beyond mere survival. I had found a way to thrive. Have you ever experienced betrayal from someone you trusted? How did you handle rebuilding your life afterward? Share your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that healing is possible even after the deepest wounds. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that your worth is never determined by those who failed to see it. Sending strength and healing to everyone on their own path to reclaiming their truth.